Hey there, curious friend. I'm Courtney, a certified peer support specialist, and welcome to Wonderland Unlocked. In this series, Curious Connections, we're diving into the twists and turns of friendships and relationships, exploring trust, growth, and those unexpected moments in between. Because in the world of connections, nothing is ever quite as it seems, but it's always worth unlocking together.
Alice, sweetheart, it's nice to see you. Alice. Alice.
Welcome back to Wonderland Unlocked and our series, Curious Connections, where we explore the fascinating, sometimes confusing world of friendships and relationships through the lens of Alice in Wonderland. Today, we're diving into one of the most unpredictable friendships you might encounter, the kind embodied by none other than the March Hare. You know, the type of friends who's wild, spontaneous, and sometimes chaotic, but also endlessly fun. The one who turns a quiet night into an unexpected adventure, but can also be, well, a lot to handle. They bring excitement, but sometimes they leave you wondering what just happened? So how do we navigate these friendships? How do we enjoy the ride without losing ourselves in the chaos? And when does unpredictability cross the line into something unhealthy? That's exactly what we're unlocking today. So grab your tea, or if you're like the March Hare, spill it everywhere, and let's get started. The March Hare is one of the more chaotic characters in Alice in Wonderland. He's unpredictable, constantly switching moods, and let's be honest, probably over-caffeinated. He throws teacups, shouts nonsense, and lives in a world where logic is optional. And yet, he's also entertaining. He keeps things interesting, and that's exactly how certain friends in our lives operate. They bring unpredictability and excitement, making sure that no 2 days are ever the same. So let's break it down. What does it actually mean to have a March Hare friend? Before we talk about the challenges, let's start with the good stuff, because having a March Hare in your life isn't all bad. In fact, they often make life more fun. Here's what they bring to the table. March Hare friends are the ones who convince you to take a spontaneous road trip, try an unexpected new hobby, or say yes to something you'd never consider on your own. They push you outside of your comfort zone in the best way. Maybe you're someone who loves routine. You have your coffee the same way every morning. You follow your to-do list religiously, and you plan your weekends in advance. Then your March Hare friend comes along and says, "Let's go to the beach right now." Or forget dinner at the usual place. We're trying that weird little food truck across town. And suddenly, you realize that breaking the routine doesn't cause the world to fall apart. In fact, it makes life more interesting. I remember a time when a friend of mine, let's call him Leo, called me out of nowhere on a random Tuesday and said, "Get in the car, trust me." Now, my first instinct was to say no. I had things to do, a schedule to stick to, but something in me said, "All right, why not?" 2 hours later, we were in a tiny town I'd never even heard of, eating the best homemade ice cream I'd ever had, listening to a live band in the middle of a park. That day wasn't on my calendar, but it became one of my favorite memories. They see worlds differently. These friends don't always follow traditional logic, which means they can introduce you to new ways of thinking. They can challenge the ordinary, offering a fresh perspective when you're stuck. Ever had a conversation with someone who just thinks differently? They don't follow the normal path of reasoning, and sometimes it's frustrating, but other times it's kind of brilliant. A March Hare friend might have a completely bizarre way of solving a problem, but somehow it works. A friend of mine, let's call her Jess, had this habit of flipping problems upside down. One time, I was stressing over a work situation where I felt stuck. I told her, "I don't know what to do. I feel like I have no good options." Instead of giving me a logical step-by-step plan, she just said, "What if you weren't even trying to solve it? What if you turned it into something fun instead?" And somehow, that weird little shift in thinking opened up an idea I hadn't considered. March Hare friends might not always give you a practical advice, but they challenge you to see things differently. and that can be a gift. They also bring laughter and energy. Even if they're unpredictable, they can also be hilarious. They remind us not to take life too seriously, injecting humor into even the dullest situations. March Hare friends are the ones who make you laugh at the most unexpected times. They dance in the grocery store aisle. They tell stories with way too much enthusiasm. They turn boring car rides into comedy shows. I once had a horrible, no good, nothing went right kind of day. I texted my friend saying, I just want to crawl into bed and forget this day ever happened. Instead of sympathy, she sent me a voice note of herself dramatically reading my text like it was part of a Shakespearean tragedy. Then she followed it up with, meet me at the park in 10 minutes. We're having a terrible day picnic. I was too exhausted to argue, so I went. She had packed the most ridiculous assortment of snacks, gummy worms, half a loaf of bread, and a single banana, which, if you know me, I don't like bananas. We sat on a blanket and dramatically retold our worst days like we were in a soap opera. By the end, we were laughing so hard I forgot why I was upset. That's the magic of March Hare Friend. They don't let you drown in your stress. They pull you into their world of silliness until suddenly things don't seem so bad anymore. They inspire you to be spontaneous and creative. March Hare friends don't just live in the moment, they create the moment. They're artists, dreamers, idea generators. Being around them can spark creativity in ways you wouldn't expect. Maybe they have wild ideas that don't always make sense, but they remind you to embrace creativity without overthinking. If you're a writer, an artist, or just someone who loves new ideas, a March Hare friend can be perfect for creative fuel. I used to struggle with creative blocks, overthinking every idea before I started. Then I made a friend who just made things without questioning. She'd paint without a plan, write stories with no outline, and started DIY projects with zero instructions. It wasn't always perfect, but it was fun. And being around her made me realize sometimes the best ideas come from just doing, not overanalyzing. March Hare friends remind us that life doesn't always need a script. Sometimes you just pick up the paintbrush and see what happens. They also teach you to let go of perfection. One of the biggest gifts a March Hare friend gives you, the ability to loosen up, to let go of the need for everything to be controlled, scheduled, or perfect. Perfectionism can be exhausting, but when you're friends with someone who thrives in chaos, you start to realize maybe perfection isn't the goal. Maybe the goal is just to live. I once helped a friend host a dinner party. She was not a planner. There was no menu, no set table, and half the food was an experiment. My inner perfectionist was panicking. But you know what? That night ended up being one of the best, most laughter-filled, real evenings I've ever had. No stress, no pressure, just good food, good company, and pure, unfiltered joy. March Hare friends remind us that sometimes messy is beautiful, that imperfection is where the best memories are made. I had a friend, let's call her Mia. Mia never planned anything. If you asked her to meet at 7, she'd show up at 9. If we went out for coffee, we'd somehow end up at a karaoke bar. She'd lost her phone at least once a week. But here's the thing, some of my best memories were made because of her unpredictability. Mia was a reminder that life isn't always meant to be structured. Sometimes the best moments comes from saying, why not, instead of why. But as fun as March Hare friend can be, there's also a flip side. Unpredictability can be exciting, but it can also be exhausting. So when does it cross the line? Spontaneity can be a great thing until it starts interfering with your responsibilities, your peace of mind, or just your basic need for structure. If their last-minute plans, lateness, or erratic behavior constantly throw you off balance, it might be time to reassess how much energy you can give this friendship. It's one thing to have a friend who surprises you with an impromptu road trip. It's another when they cancel plans at the last minute, leave you waiting for hours, or pull you into chaos when you just don't have the bandwidth for it. I had a friend, we'll call her Lily, who lived an entire life on her own timeline. She'd make plans and then either change them last minute or forget about them completely. One time, we were supposed to meet for lunch. I showed up at the restaurant and waited and waited. 30 minutes passed, then an hour, and finally she texted, "Oh my God, I totally got caught up in something. Let's do dinner instead." I wish I could say that that was a one-time thing, but it wasn't. And after a while, I realized that no matter how much fun she was, I couldn't keep putting my own time and energy into her unpredictability. That's the key here. If someone's chaos is making your life harder, it's okay to step back. Some March Hare friends struggle with personal boundaries. They might expect you to drop everything for them, show up unannounced, or push you into situations you're uncomfortable with. It's not always intentional. Some people are just wired to live in the moment, and they assume everyone else is too. But if your March Hare friend keeps ignoring the limits you set, whether it's your time, your space, or even your emotional energy, it's a problem. I had a friend, let's call him Ben, who always had a new wild idea. One night, he called me at 11 p.m. and said, "Come outside, we're going on an adventure." And when I told him I had an early morning and I couldn't, he just laughed and said, "Oh, come on, you never do anything crazy." It sounds harmless, right? But it kept happening. If I declined an invite, he'd pressure me. If I said I needed a quiet night, he'd show up on my door anyways. At first, I told myself that's just Ben being Ben. But over time, I realized if someone consistently ignores your boundaries, even in the name of fun, it's not just a quirk, it's a sign of disrespect. A good friend respects when you say no, even if they don't understand it. It's one thing to be fun and spontaneous, but true friendship also means being dependable. If they disappear when you need support, that's a red flag. March Hare friends tend to thrive in high energy, exciting situations. But what happens when things aren't exciting? When you need someone to sit with you in your sadness, help you through a crisis, or just be there when life isn't fun? Let's talk about Jake. Jake was the life of the party, always coming up with wild ideas, always keeping things interesting. But when I was going through a hard time and needed a serious conversation, he brushed it off. He wasn't comfortable with deep emotions, and that's when I realized he was great for fun, but not support. One time, I really needed to talk. Something heavy was happening in my life, and I reached out to him. He responded with, "Hey, let's go get drinks and forget about it." And when I told him I didn't want to forget about it, that I needed a real conversation, he got uncomfortable. He changed the subject, and eventually he just stopped replying. That's when it hit me. Some friendships are built for laughter, for adventure, for fun, and that's okay. But if someone can't show up when you really need them, they may not be the kind of friend you can rely on in the long run. Friendships should have balance, but sometimes with a March Hare friend, the relationship starts to revolve around their chaos, their plans, and their spontaneousness, and your needs take a back seat. If you constantly feel like you're adjusting to their world, dropping everything when they call, making room for their unpredictability, bending your schedule to accommodate their last-minute changes, it can start feeling exhausting. I had a friend, we'll call her Zoe, who only called me when she had a wild idea. Let's go on a road trip. Let's sign up for dance class. Let's crash that party. And when I said yes, it was great. But the second I needed something from her, even something small, she was suddenly unavailable. One day I tested it. Instead of waiting for her to reach out, I called her and said, "Hey, I really need to talk." Her response, "Oh, I'm kind of busy. Can we do something fun later instead?" That's when I realized our friendship wasn't a two-way street. It was just me getting swept under her whirlwind, but she never stepped into my world. A friendship shouldn't feel like you're constantly trying to keep up with someone else's chaos. It should feel mutual. The biggest sign that a March Hare friend might be too much, when spending time with them leaves you feeling exhausted instead of energized. Friendships should add to your life, not drain you. If you leave every hangout feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or like you need a full day to recover, that's a sign something isn't right. I used to love hanging out with my March Hare friend, but after a while, I noticed that every time we spent time together, I felt tired afterward, not just physically, but mentally. The unpredictability, the emotional highs and lows, the constant energy, it started to wear me down. One day, I caught myself thinking, do I even want to do this? And that was my wake-up call. The best friendships make you feel good, even if they challenge you, even if they push you outside of your comfort zone. They should never make you feel like they're draining you. So does that mean you have to cut off your March Hare friend? Not necessarily, but it does mean setting boundaries, meaning being honest about what you can and can't handle, and recognizing when a friendship, no matter how fun, is starting to take more than it gives. It's okay to love their energy while also knowing your limits. It's okay to appreciate their spontaneousness while also needing time for some structure. And most importantly, it's okay to step back if their chaos starts costing you your peace. Because at the end of the day, the best friendships aren't just exciting, they're sustainable. So if you have a March Hare friend, how do you make sure the friendship stays healthy? Here are a few key strategies. Set clear boundaries. It's okay to love their energy, but still need structure. Be honest. I love our spontaneous plans, but I need a little notice sometimes. Don't rely on them for everything. A March Hare friend might be amazing for fun adventures, but not the best for emotional support. That's okay. Just make sure you have other friends who could fill different roles. Communicate openly. If their unpredictability is becoming overwhelming, talk about it. Most of the time, they don't even realize the impact they're having. At the end of the day, March Hare friends bring something special into our lives. They remind us to embrace the unexpected, to find joy in spontaneousness, and to let go of perfection. The key is balance, enjoying the chaos without getting swept away in it, appreciating their energy while protecting your own peace. Because the best friendships, no matter how unpredictable, should add to your life, not drain it. So do you have a March Hare friend? Or maybe you are the March Hare? Either way, learning how to navigate these friendships can help us build deeper, healthier connections with the people who make life interesting. That's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and share it with a friend, or maybe even your own March Hare. Until next time, keep unlocking those connections.